And here I want to share a poetry by Sheikh Muhammad Salim al-Adud. Muhammad Salim al-Adud is one of the scholars of Mauritania, one of the Maliki scholars. And he had a long poetry in explanation of a fiqh text. I think it was 1,000 lines of poetry in fiqh al-Maliki. I think it's called Mukhtasar Khalil. And as an introduction, he added 100 lines in the Aqidah of the Salaf, where he did not use any terms that were invented after. Rather, he was sticking to the terms that are mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah and mentioned by the Salaf, rahimahullah ta'ala, the Sahaba, and the Tabi'in. So he mentions here in regards to Allah's attributes, he says, يُمَرُّ ما في وصفه جاء من الوحي كما يفهم فيهم من نزل. He says, we let go with what Allah has been attributed with from the revelation, كما يفهم فيهم من نزل, the way that those people who receive the revelation would understand. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah's al-alim, an Arab at that time would understand that Allah alim meaning he has ilm, he has knowledge. But you would find some school of thought that he would tell you, we don't know what that means. We don't know what alim means. If an Arab hears that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends, he knows what is descending. He doesn't have to know, imagine the howness of it. He knows what is descending. The meaning is known. The howness is unknown. Then he says, رحمه الله تعالى, من غير ما تكييف أو تمثيل له ولا تحريف أو تأويل. Without knowing takif, the howness of it, أو تمثيل, likening it to the creation. That Allah's mercy is like my mercy. Allah's knowledge is like my knowledge. We don't do that. Allah's knowledge is Allah's knowledge. The terms are shared between me and Allah. We both have mercy. We both have knowledge. We both have existence. But Allah's existence is not like my existence. Therefore, Allah's descending is not like my descending. يعني. ولا تحريف أو تأويل. تحريف أو تأويل are the same thing. They call it ta'wil, which is allegorical interpretation, meaning to give the text a meaning that is not the apparent meaning of the text. To give the text a meaning that is not the apparent meaning of the text. That is what we don't want to do unless there is a qarina, there is an evidence. Then he says, رحمه الله تعالى, وما نقول في صفات قدسه, and this is very important, فرع الذي نقوله في نفسه فإن يقل جهميهم كيف استوى كيف يجي فقل له كيف هو. So he says, when we talk about the attributes of Allah, we are talking about Allah. So if you want to ask me a Sunni and you tell me, how does Allah descend? Why you believe in such? Tell him, you're asking about the howness of Allah, because asking about Allah's attribute is like asking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. So if you don't know the reality of Allah, you won't surrender the reality of his attribute, subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِن يَقُلْ جَهْمِيهُمْ كَيْفَ اسْتَوَى. If the Jahmi says, how is his istiwa? How does he come and descend? فَقُلْ لَهُ كَيْفَ هُوَ. Tell him, how is Allah? Respond to him and tell him, how is Allah? Tell me how is Allah, and I'll explain to you his attribute. And I'll explain to you his attribute. So then he says, رحمه الله تعالى, لا فرق بين ما سميه يعد وصفا لنا كعلم أو جزءا كيد الباب في الجميع واحد فلا تكن معطلا ولا ممثلا. He says, there is no difference between what we consider to be an attribute or a part. So for us, you would say, I have knowledge, that's an attribute, and I have a hand, that's a part of me. However, that doesn't mean we imagine for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what is not befitting to himself. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he folds the heavens with his hand, we don't assume and imagine how is the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know what a hand is. We know the hands of Allah by the effect, the fact that he created Adam with them. Allah says that he created Adam with his two hands. We know what that means linguistically. We affirm the meaning. However, we do not know the howness of it. We don't know the howness of it. What you imagine is not correct about Allah, because whatever you imagine is based on an analogy of what you have seen in front of your eyes. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like nothing that you have seen. Therefore, logically, every analogy that you make is not befitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala says, وَقُلْ غَيْرَ مَخْلُوقٍ كَلَامُ مَلِكِنَا.